Hello and welcome to Cape Ann ARTWaves 2022 season. ARTWaves is a member program of 1623 Studios here in Gloucester, Massachusetts. We kicked off our program in March of 2020. ARTWaves delves into the lives and work of our artists here on Cape Ann. My name is Jacqueline Ganem DeFalco. I co-host this show with Christine Fisher. And we are very proud to announce that ARTWaves has over 14,000 views on YouTube since we began. And we've interviewed about over 60 artists so far. ARTWaves is made possible by our generous sponsors, Prince Insurance Agency, M. Christine Fisher, Visual Artist, Compass Realty, Martha Anger, Real Estate Advisor, Cape Ann Savings Bank, Protective Packaging, Inc., and the Common Crow Natural Market. We'd also like to recognize Steve Lacey and Pat Verga, who have provided us with original music for the show. And we'd like to acknowledge our partners, Sea Arts and 1623 Studios, who have been fabulous about marketing and getting us out into the universe. Without their collective effort, the show would not be able to go on. I'm very pleased today to welcome somebody who I actually was overlapped with on the Cape Ann Artisans Tour when I first started back in 2013. His name is David Montgomery. Say hello, David.
Hello.
So I'm going to tell you a little bit about David Montgomery for those of you who don't already know David. He's a very accomplished artist, working across media in oils and watercolors, pastels, and also charcoal, across also many subject matter. But to many Gloucester natives and maritime experts, David is also known as a third-generation boat builder who for some 30 years crafted one-of-a-kind pleasure boats, fishing boats, and the locally famous fish class catboats. He actually operates from a beautiful, peaceful riverside setting. So the setting is the Montgomery's family boatyard on the Annisquam River, as well as wooden boats that are still built there, inspire a lot of David's artwork. The studio and gallery are located in the former shop where he built boats for over 30 years. David attended Montserrat College of Art, but it took him until 2005 before he decided to return full-time to painting. Montgomery's subjects are sometimes the very boats he built. He's also an accomplished portrait artist and draftsman who has been praised for his skill at capturing a likeness as well as the character and personality of the sitter. His drawing is not just technically correct, as you'll see as we go throughout the interview. He's able to imbue his work with an emotional quality that gives it a sense of life. The artist's nature and deep appreciation of his hometown also comes through as there's a sense of stillness and quietude in all his work. David was known to talk a little bit about his work in local papers. And one of the things he said that really impressed me was, I feel very privileged to live in an area with such a rich artistic heritage, one that continues to this day, and to have been able to paint with such great Cape Ann artists as Betty Lou Schlemm, Jeff Weaver, and my childhood friend, David Curtis. After 30 years of building boats, I get joy out of rendering their shapes with brush and paint on canvas, and it doesn't hurt my back. So with that, I'd like to introduce David Montgomery. David, how are you today?
Oh, very good.
Good. So you're surrounded by your amazing work. And it's just so beautiful looking at all your pieces behind you. So I'm excited about you sharing your story today. So let's talk first about your personal journey from your childhood here in Gloucester. And so much of your work is tied to your working experience right in the heart here of our marine industry. And what are your favorite memories from boat building that inspired you to pursue this artistic career?
Well, growing up in this boatyard, I would see my father and his crew building boats of all shapes and sizes, up to big fishing boats to small family cruising boats, and then our fish class cat boats, which we've built hundreds and hundreds of. Plus, later on, when I started building boats and getting such satisfaction out of taking a sheet of plans, rough pile of lumber, and then turning it into something really aesthetically beautiful. That was, that got my love for the shape of boats.
I know, and I can see here. We're going to show a few photos of you as a boat builder, and also some of the boats that you actually built, which are pretty phenomenal in these first couple of photos that we're going to show. So I think it would be really important for people to understand a little bit about your style. So you're focused on obviously boats, but you also do a lot of portraits. How would you describe your style? You studied at Montserrat, and then you had a little bit of a break in there, obviously, before you decided to go back. But your style must have evolved from the time that you studied till the time that you then went back to painting full time.
Well, I was definitely influenced by Jeff Weaver and Dave Curtis. And my style, I just took what I could do, how I felt while I'm painting. And I love a good strong drawing structure to a painting. And then whatever came out, that was a result of those influences and all the way back to Norman Rockwell.
Yeah, well, you shared with me the old pun. We're going to show that painting, and then you showed us another painting that you did a little bit later to sort of show how you evolved. Why don't you speak to that? Because we're gonna start out by showing the old pun, and then I think, as you described to me earlier, maybe a more refined version of your boat painting, and maybe you could discuss that a little bit.
Sure. The old Pung, anybody who's been to Rocky Neck knows that boat. It was one my grandfather built in 1946 for an Annisquam fella, and now owned by Larry Dallmer. And the style of that, I just wanted to kind of capture that day with the sun, the boat just about to float. The bow is still aground, and it was just about to float and catch the light on the sails and do a fairly realistic kind of painting, but also captured the impression of it as well.
But the evolution of that to the other painting that you discussed here, was there anything in particular that you wanted to see to improve upon or change as you developed your style over time?
Yes, creating a sense of atmosphere is something that is easy for some, but not for me. So I worked on trying to make this painting of the Maine very atmospheric. Feel like you could reach into it.
Mm-hmm. Can definitely see that. Yeah.
Be richer with the colors and but keeping in mind the temperature of the colors.
Mm-hmm.
As the warm colors come forward and cools retreat, and I tried to carry that consistently throughout so it would appear to have depth.
That's great. So you've already alluded to the incredible influences you had, people, of course, before your time, like Groupie and Rockwell, but then here in Cape Ann, these incredible influencers, Betty Lou Schlemm and Jeff Weaver and David Curtis, you've alluded to several times. So let's start with something that was influenced by Jeff Weaver, for example.
Sure.
Right. Talk
Yeah.
about that experience, because I interviewed Jeff, was one of the first interviews I did.
Okay. Well, Jeff was very kind, and when I got back to painting, uh, he was actually still a sign painter and just beginning to get known as a great painter. And this painting of the paint factory we did from his lobster boat, and we anchored off and we're broadside to the waves and the boats rocking back and forth, and we're trying to draw straight lines, and he did better than I did, but I got a lot out of that. And then of course I took the painting back to the studio and worked on it many hours.
I love that. Let's talk about Betty Lou Schlem. You have a couple of paintings here that you did either with her or with her influence. So let's chat about those.
Okay, those are the two watercolors we have, and this one especially of the white sailboat in the water.
Hmm.
It, something I couldn't have done without painting with Betty Lou for a while. Betty Lou was a great teacher, and she was somebody who just lived art every minute of the day, it seemed.
Hmm.
And great person, and helped me and many other people over the years.
Yes, it's exciting. I'm going to do an advertorial here because I do understand that Manship Artist Residence is trying to put together a residency in her name, and we'll have a wonderful auction of some of her works to raise money. So it's kind of exciting time for her legacy, and obviously you're part of that legacy too. And I think there's another painting here that you did either with her or with her influence as well.
Yes, that was Dominic Nestor, John Nestor's son, who was a great artist, and he works for us part time in the spring. And that's a actually a gouache painting, which is opaque watercolor,
Hmm.
and that's him just scraping the bottom of one of our fish class cat boats. One of the more unpleasant jobs in the yard.
Yes, we all look forward to that every spring. That's super. Let's move on to David Curtis because I think he had a lot more than just influence in terms of style. If I think this is a fantastic story that you should tell about David, and then we should show some work you did under his influence as well.
Dave and I grew up in the same neighborhood, and as kids, we went to the same bus stop and rode the bus together to grade school. Well, over time, we developed this little competition of drawing, who could draw better. And we give each other assignments, go home, and then the next morning on the bus, we'd check each other's work. And that was great fun. And I generally won.
And where were you in school, by the way, together?
Beeman School,
Okay.
that's right here in Riverdale.
Right, right. Not far from where you are right now. Right?
I didn't roam far.
You didn't need to. You live in such a beautiful spot. But then he popped back up in your life, I think.
Yeah, after about 30 years of losing contact with him, I ran into him at the Rockport Art Association, and he was teaching a class, and I was had kind of got my fill of boat building. And, getting a little old, it was getting a little painful to build boats. So uh, he asked if he could bring a class down. And I'm working on a boat, not having any fun at all. And I'm looking out and I see all these people painting, and I'm like, that's what I want to do. So from that, I literally gave up boat building and started painting.
So David pushed you over the edge, right?
Yes.
So this lovely painting with a child, I think a child holding an umbrella.
It's a grown woman.
Oh, it is. I'm sorry.
Well,
Okay.
actually, I take that back. It's whatever you want it to be.
Okay. Well, I'm looking at a very small picture of this. So,
This was from David's figure in the garden class, which I just loved going to. It was one of the odder poses, but turned into one of the nicest paintings I did there.
and what in particular, I mean, that's very different than a lot of your other work. So, what did you take away from your time with David?
A more rounded outlook on painting. I was kind of zeroed in on had to be boats and marine, and then he opened my eyes to people like Zorn and Soroya.
Mm,
I
mm,
started buying books and Sargent, and
mm.
I had a much broader appreciation for art and for the types of things I could do.
That's great. That's great. Now let's talk a little bit about, kind of style and I mean process really. Like how do you what is the way you practice your art? Like do you start with a photo? Are you doing plein air? Ch Sort of talk to us a little bit about how things evolve for you.
Generally, I like to start with a toned canvas and then a pretty loose drawing with a burnt umber and just keep it transparent, very thin. And from that very loose beginning, uh, I can start putting color in, get the composition pretty close to what I want, and then get the essentials and get what is it, a cloudy day? Was it a sunny day?
Mm-hmm.
Is it looking like a sunny day? And getting my lights and darks and warms and cools established. And once I've just covered the whole canvas and have my basic information, then I always take it back to the studio. I never really finish anything on site.
Mm-hmm. There's a great photo that we're going to show here of the painting you did of I guess it's a sailboat. It's one of the Aldens, a cutter rig. So that's
Yeah,
a pretty complex painting. Can you tell us a little bit about it? What medium was that done in, and how did you evolve that?
that was oil on
Mhm.
canvas.
Okay.
That was in the boatyard here. And again, that was another boat my grandfather had built. Built that
Fantastic.
1939, John Alden 33-foot, big sloop, and the luckiest Montgomery built boat ever, because from 39 there really aren't too many boats left, especially considering they used iron fastenings.
Oh boy.
And but this particular one started with the usual approach of building up from a sketch in burnt sienna and laying in some light tones. But what I loved about it was the draping of the awning. That this was summer and the owners were trying to keep it cool and keep it from drying out. So I just slowly started working with the warms, the cools, the warmth and the light and the little temporary shed next door to it, and then the coolness right next to that, juxtaposing warm and cool together to keep it interesting, and slowly building up the paint. Uh, this I gotta say was a painting that I worked on a long time.
Yep. And
Uh,
when were you actively painting this? Can you remember how long ago this was?
5 years ago.
5 years ago? I have to tell you, the way you described it just now, it's like you were painting it yesterday. I can feel the way you were painting it in this discussion. So Obviously, you put a lot into it.
Yeah, where it was one of my father and grandfather's boats. Plus, the owner is the fellow that now runs my storage business, Jeff King.
Oh, isn't that great?
He's taken amazing care of it over the years. Just whatever it takes, it gets,
Mhm.
which is great.
And it's out there being used, I'm assuming, from what you said. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
that's
goes
great.
just about every year.
Isn't that great? So let's talk a little bit about your art and sort of it's been out, you were out there quite a bit, in like around 2010, you were part of the Cape Ann Artisans, which was exciting. And you obviously have had a number of other exhibits along the way, and some fantastic exhibits right there in your own boatyard. And I think you were going to share with me a fantastic story about what
Yeah.
happened with somebody coming to the boatyard and buying a painting. It's not your average story. Tell us about that, and we'll actually show this painting that was the subject of this story as well.
Well, we had a show in late August a few years ago, and invited all the neighbors and anybody we could think of. And the one of the people who showed up was a guy who used to work on his father's boat in the storage shed right next door. This was a job he just hated. It was a big old wooden cruiser, and he had to climb underneath and paint the bottom every year. So when he was done one year, he walked over to the old wooden sliding door and wrote in great big letters, wrote CK on it. That was, that was his pronouncing. He'd done that boat. He painted the bottom of that boat finally. That story goes back quite a few years. Then he showed up at the show we had and liked the painting because it was just the inside. It was kind of the view he would have had looking out while he was painting on the boat. He noticed that in the corner of the painting there was a CK, and he looked at it. I did that when I was 12 years old, and it's still there.
His own little form of graffiti.
Yeah.
Right? And he wound up buying that painting, right?
And wound up buying the painting.
What a great story, David. That is just so much fun. That's so much fun. I think that was one of the better stories I've heard. Anyway, so moving on a little bit, I want to switch up to talk about portraits with you because, again, your reputation was certainly built on all these incredible paintings you've done of boats, but you are such a talented portrait artist. So I do want to show these two of the portraits that you've done, and you can talk about them. The first one is this gentleman, Tom Hill from the Yankee Fleet, who you mentioned was a neighbor of yours. And it's an exquisite portrait. Why don't you tell us about the experience of doing the portrait and also the technique and what you used to accomplish this incredible likeness?
Sure. Uh, well, Tom came in my studio one day just to look at what I've been doing lately and saw a small drawing that I did in kind of high def, somehow you might want to say. And he liked it very much. So he asked if I'd do one of him, which I gratefully did, and took some took some pictures. We decided on the pose that he liked, that we both liked best, and then started the very slow process. This is real high detail kind of a drawing. Uh, it can take quite a while to do. I enjoyed every bit of it because you just really can lose yourself for hours in a drawing like this. Just uh, getting every little detail right, getting every value right, and the shapes and the lighting. I For all the time, I wouldn't even, I'd hate to tell you how little I charged him for it. But with neighbors, he got the neighborhood discount.
Got that. And then we have another portrait we're going to show of Rebecca, a very cold Rebecca with a hat on.
Well, she was living in a house with stone walls, and it was the middle of winter when I started that, and did a like a half-hour sketch, and kind of put it away. But then I took another look and saw how it kind of had an old-fashioned Holbein-y kind of look.
Mm.
So I tried to emphasize that quality in it. And we did get won an award at Rockport Art Association for it.
That's great. That's super. Um, so the interesting thing here is these are both, interesting sort of informal situations where people kind of were in your life and you did their portraits, but you really have a full scale portrait commission business. And I want you to talk about that because I think that, probably more people would do portraits if they understood a little bit more about the process. So you could maybe talk about your process, but also feeling that it's accessible. Let's put it that way. And that it's something that they could actually think about doing, and they don't have to be the president of the United States to do it, right? So,
Sure, sure. The portrait process is as I like to do it, is basically just having someone come in. Ideally, they would pose for an hour. When I laid it in, but then I'd take some photos, and most of it, almost all of it, was really done by done from photos, and it's a painless process, pretty much, and not outrageously expensive. I do oil, pastel, and graphite, and I charcoal as well.
mm,
Uh,
mm.
my new favorite is the graphite with the high detail on it. I do oils. I did one of Dominic and Nicole Nesta, who uh, did a kind of a quick one of just them in the boatyard with all the equipment behind them, and that was a fun one to do.
And the two that we showed, are those in graphite or pencil or
All graphite.
all graphite, right?
Well, graphite and carbon pencil.
And
So
carbon pencil.
the darks, you
Yeah.
need the carbon to get the real darks.
Okay. It sounds like you're itching to do more of these.
Oh, I'd love to. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, we're going to make sure people know how to reach you. So we'll get to that at the end of our show. But anything that let's talk about what's next for you, David. Like, what would you love to paint or do? And I think a little bit is what you just mentioned, obviously more portraiture. But you've been a little off the radar, and so tell us what your plans are so that we can look out for you.
Well, I'm planning a show on everything relating directly to the boatyard, boats, people who own boats, people who just hang around the boatyard sometimes, and doing pictures of even antique boats from old photos. I have old photos that go to the 30s, and doing some paintings of those, plus paintings. I have a collection of antique tools that my father and grandfather used, and I'm thinking of doing several. They have great shapes, the old tools, and painting them with all the patina on them, and seeing how that goes. That's
all the wear and tear and
yeah,
the DNA that went into all that boat building, right?
right. Yeah.
Yeah. That's great. Wow. So when are you thinking this might happen so we can all have it on our radar screen?
Uh, Probably the middle of next summer. I'm not in a hurry.
Okay. All right. Well, it's something for us to really look forward to. And in order to stay in touch with you, then tell us how you like to be contacted.
Email is probably the best.
Okay. Well, we'll be sure that we put that up on the screen.
And
And any other way?
well, I do have a cell phone now. I'm the last.
Oh, excellent. Okay.
So
Well, we'll share all that information on the screen so you don't have to worry about it. But I'm glad to hear that because you're somebody that I'm sure people will want to get in touch with and be looking forward to next year. So thank you so much. We're excited. I'm just excited that you took the time to do this today and share your beautiful work with us. We're going to show some more fantastic photos from the boatyard so that people can, really look forward to what's coming next summer. And with that, I'm going to wrap up today's KPN ARTWaves and thank once again all of our generous sponsors and encourage our viewers to watch for us on Channel 12, on 1623 Studios YouTube list, and on the C-Arts email, on Twitter, and on Facebook. And share our show generously. And thank you to David Montgomery. And David, so glad to have you on the show today.
thank you very much. Thank you, John.